In each sales interaction, I see a huge value which can get unlocked. Salespeople talk about a lot of excuses, a lot of things which they do not want to share with the management.
The business leaders will now get to know why exactly some deals are closing. It's more about what objections is he struggling with and which competitors come up the most. Sales is all a game of empathy and emotional quotient.
How good these AI models are in its current avatar.
Let's say ChatGPT say that we are the friendliest. Claude says that we are the best at coding. Grok says we are the most honest and we are the fastest. That is what we considered as error. AI needs to be as good as a human in terms of detecting emotions, emotional understanding of tonality of prosody. It is not there yet at all. But I'm personally very excited for these models to be coming up which can understand emotions or which can understand laughter, which can understand sarcasm.
Do you want to share any of your personal experience where you believe whether it is conversational AI or interpretation of conversation is leading to something which is really disruptive or magnificent?
I have been recently reading this book. What Alfred Adler says is that all the problems in your life are interpersonal relationship problems, but all the happiness in your life also comes from interpersonal relationships. Everything you have to do is with people. Without people, what will you do? And every happiness is with people.
Hello everyone, I am Puneet Kukreja from the Economic Times and this is ETAI podcast. It is a space where business leaders decode how AI is reshaping the entire businesses, whether it's about strategy, whether it's about a business model or the complete organizational structure. Today's theme of discussion is AI in conversations, which we believe for businesses is much more disruptive than what ChatGPT has done for content creation. And what we actually see in all the business meetings, whether it is leadership meetings, sales meetings, reviews, there are a lot of fruitful discussions, but ultimately signals get lost. And when decisions are made, these decisions are made on half truths, which is obviously not good for businesses. So we strongly believe conversational AI will play an important and integral part in redefining how business decisions get taken and how businesses grow. Today, I have Aryan with me, who is the co-founder and CTO of NeoSapien, who has built an AI that remembers and all kind of conversations. We'll discuss more in detail. He's an IIT Madras alumni and a former AI researcher at Siemens. He's pioneering conversational intelligence, helping companies turn every customer interaction into actionable insight, which obviously turns into a lot of dollars, lot of money, lot of profitability. So before I speak more about Aryan, over to you. Why don't you share your journey about your product, a very small brief before we get on to a conversation around conversational AI and how it is going to be a big disruption for business.
Thank you, Puneet. Thanks so much for having me here. Super excited to be speaking with you. So I'm Aryan, like Puneet has said. I'm co-founder and CTO at NeoSapien. We started NeoSapien around 2 years back with the entire premise that, the biggest source of data in this world is the conversational data. Almost every kind of business decisions are being made via conversations. And this is 95% of the data which the AI does not have access to. At the moment, AI has access to your documents, your chat history, your Slack messages, but not your conversations in the physical world. So that is the insight which we started off with, because personal AI will be built on top of data, biggest source of which is conversational data. The entire premise of starting NeoSapien was to build personal AI using conversational data as the training ground for personal AI. We started this 2 years back. We started shipping this wearable, which we call as Neo 1, around 6 months back. We have sold off around 1,000 units. One of the biggest use cases are actually appearing in the sales analytics as a use case. We can talk about that in much more detail, I think, in the later sections of the podcast, but that is quick about me and the company.
Oh, thanks, Aryan. Since you talked about sales, let's pick up one use case, because sales is something which is horizontal and is in all companies. So specifically for sales, what kind of use cases do you see are more important? If I just try to visualize, I see whether it is a telesales or a direct sales, which is directly interacting with the clients. In each sales interaction, I see a huge value which can get unlocked, because typically at the end of every quarter, at the end of every year, salespeople talk about a lot of excuses, a lot of things which they do not want to share with the management.
Correct.
And typically management also does not have much better options in terms of product improvement, in terms of change in strategy or investments in certain markets. Specifically in sales, how is it going to help companies and more importantly salespeople also, if you can throw some light on?
Specifically in the sales domain, I think we are seeing three game changing applications. The first of which is, the voice of customer, that towards scale. Every company wants to understand what are the enablers of customers, what are the competitors the customers are talking about, and so on. That is basically the voice of customer. Instead of, hiring an agency, let's say like Nielsen or someone, which can survey 100 customers with, conversational intelligence, now it is possible to be analyzing 10,000 customers at scale and their conversations. The business leaders will now get to know why exactly some deals are closing, why some deals are not closed. That is the first one. Second one we feel is, in sales performance intelligence. Basically, the analysis of how well a sales team is performing. This is not just about, how many sales call, let's say, did Raj made or someone. It's more about what objections is he struggling with and which competitors come up the most and what are the objections which the customers are raising. The third is, I think it has to do with relationship memory. Think of it like this: when a client says to a salesperson that we discussed this last time, now your system, if it is analyzing all these conversations, it knows exactly what they mean when they say last time, what has been talked about. So every client preference which you previously used to forget, now you know that. Now you know every concern, now you know every commitment, everything is captured. So that is what I think sales intelligence, conversational analytics can offer to the sales team.
And do you think the solutions are practical right now? Because if I were to summarize what you just said, you're saying when the conversation is happening, it's about a salesperson with a client and a conversation. So there are three parts to this. You can get to know whether your salesperson is good enough,
Yes.
whether he is meeting the right set of client, and whether the person is pitching your product properly. If I were to extend it further, I believe there will be some, if the person is also able to wear some kind of AI glasses, the person will also be able to get some prompt in terms of how to respond to certain objection in the real time. Do you think it's possible or it's just imaginary what we're discussing right?
Be your question in two steps. I'll answer the second one first. Let's say someone is wearing a smart glasses and they get real time prompts. In the world of sales, so I've been talking to a lot of salespeople. In the world of sales, right, being present at that moment is much more important, or closing the deal and maintaining the relationship and building the relationship. This real time feedback, if a salesperson gets, they will get diverted away from whatever the client is saying. Real time feedback is not going to work. What is going to work is after the conversation, if the business team has awareness that okay, these are the winning patterns in a sales team, in the sales team which is winning and closing more deals. These are the patterns of the teams which are not being able to close such deals. These are the objections which the customers are raising. Accordingly, the business team can tweak their sales strategy as such. Now, what is in it for salespeople? For salespeople, they can now get to know how emotionally empathetic have they been, whether they have been present or not. Sales is all a game of empathy and emotional quotient and not so much of an IQ as such. Then questions might arise that okay, for example, let's say CRMs and all exist, why is there a need for another platform on top of CRMs? And I think you are absolutely right, and people are absolutely right in pointing out the fact that CRMs exist. Sales dashboards aren't anything new, but this is what has changed. Traditional dashboards, this show you what has happened, the calls which were made, the emails which were sent. Conversational AI, it shows you why it happened, why, what client actually said, and what objections killed the deals. So the difference is this that before rep had to manually log that client had concerns about the pricing. Now AI can capture that your client said that okay, your pricing is 20% higher than your competitor X, but they value your support, right? Or this is what they liked about your product. So now the technology has shifted. The technology shift is important as well, because right now technology is there that it can recognize not just English, it can recognize your Kannada words, your Tamil, Telugu, Hindi, Gujarati, and all the other Indic languages as well.
So this is something which I just wanted to ask you, Aryan, that in India we have different dialects, different languages, and within the same language you will see different people mixing different languages during the conversation. How good these AI models are in its current avatar, and you can also talk more about your own product. which is NeoSapien device, which you are also wearing at this point in time. How good is this in terms of identifying different dialects and then transcribing it in a way that it is then you are able to actually convert this into an actionable intelligence for a sales leader or for a CEO of a company?
There are n number of different models out there in the market. For example, just an analogy, there is ChatGPT, there is Gemini, there is Claude, there is Grok, and all these different models usually play on different parameters. Let's say ChatGPT say that we are the friendliest. Claude says that we are the best at coding. Grok says we are the most honest and we are the fastest. Similarly, in the speech to text domain, which is, the models which can take audio conversations and transcribe it in some ways, there are different models which are good at different things. There are models which are great at English, but are not so great at Indic languages. While there are other models, for example, there are some amazing models which are being made by Sarvam, another Indian company which is into building sovereign AI for India. They are doing amazing job at building Indic models which can understand all these Indic dialects better and the Indic regional languages better. Where we stand as of now is that we are the best in the world, and I can say that because we have recently published evals on LinkedIn and the benchmarks. We are the best in terms of Indic regional language understanding. That means that there is no one out there in the market which can understand code switching. For example, we can right now talk in English. Suddenly, I can switch to Hindi or even Gujarati. We can understand all these languages better than anyone else in the market. With respect to where the accuracy stands as of, the accuracy is around 80 to 90% is what I would say. And there is a long way for us to go before we reach 95 or even 99% of accuracy.
So how do you define accuracy, Aryan, in conversational? How do you define? Because in machine learning technology, it's easy to say. I mean, where the areas are clearly black or white.
Yes.
So in conversational AI, how do you define accuracy?
Let me take an example. Audience can understand what I mean by accuracy. A technical word is word error rate. What that means is, let's say we are recording this podcast. Now you can have previous, when these STT models were not there, there used to be humans who would, note it down by hand. This is what has been said by Aryan. This is what has been said by Puneet, and so on. Similarly, so there is this ground truth. For example, we record this podcast. We ask a very amazing human who is good at transcribing. We will ask him, okay, how would you transcribe this podcast? Then we will take our model and then we will ask our model to transcribe this podcast. Now, how many words are different from the human labeled? That is what we considered as error. Let's say 100 words have been spoken. 5 words we dictated or mistranscribed. That will be 5% word error rate. So that is how we gauge accuracy.
Okay. This remembers me of medical transcription, which used to be something which used to be very famous in India 20 years back, when a lot of American companies used to outsource this medical transcription, in which this is how they used to have QAs check the accuracy for people who used to do transcription work for doctors in the US. Since you're talking about doctors, let's also talk about healthcare as an industry. And before doing this podcast, I remember having a chat with you, and I was really amazed the kind of use cases which you told me about healthcare as a sector. All of us visit doctors multiple times in the year for good reasons, of course, not.
Yeah.
I think even for preventive measures, for multiple kind of things, we visit doctors, and they typically have very less time for each patient. And typically they blabber a lot, they talk a lot, and they are in a different mood all the time. Typically, in your assessment, I think it's going to be a game changer, because there everything happens verbally. Everything is a conversation when you talk to a doctor, irrespective of the level, whether, the person you're going to a specialist, everything is a conversation. And a lot of times it is very, very difficult to even interpret what doctor is saying, and you'll need to come back home and understand better with the help of Google or ChatGPT. So how do you think this space is changing, or this will evolve in next couple of years, if conversational AI actually becomes the mainstream reality?
Yes. So here is what conversational AI is doing on a very fundamental base. It is saving time wherein a human would have, manually done something, either manually noted things down or manually analyzed manual data entry. So whenever complete that workflow for anyone, whether it be sales representatives, whether it be doctors, if you can save time for anyone, they are going to pay you for the product which you have built. Rightly pointed out, the main job of a doctor is to treat patients and not to be taking notes. And we have had discussion with a lot of hospitals chains and doctors as well. Doctors spend, and this is very well documented and researched for, they spend around 15 to 20 hours per week just on documenting and noting things down in their legacy softwares. Because most of the hospitals, you would know that most of the hospitals run on legacy software which were written in Java like 20 years years back, they are still following the same processes. So here is, where conversational AI can help doctors. They can help doctors focus on what they are good at. They are good at treating patients. Conversational AI's value proposition is you focus on treating patients. We will take care of the note taking for you. We will ensure that the accuracy is high as possible so as to meet all the standards of medical compliance like privacy compliance like GDPR and so on. Yeah, so the conversational AI, this is how the workflow will go on with respect to the healthcare industry. Basically, let's say a patient visits the doctors. The doctor is just taking, just talking to the patient on the go, right, without noting anything down. That way he can be more involved in understanding what is the core problem of the patient instead of being distracted and noting down the name of the medicine and so on.
Completely agree with you. We have seen a lot of times in which doctors are typically busy in just noting things down because they have to complete X number of patients in a certain time frame, which again, I think it is going to solve a big problem. But tell me one thing, because see, healthcare is very, very sensitive
Yes.
in terms of outcome, because 80% 90% error rate may work for an analysis job of sales call, but in healthcare, if you actually misinterpret a medicine name or what doctor has said, it can lead to some fatal ramifications. So do you think at this point in time, or even say it is like a self-driving car, it is going to take a lot of time to come into mainstream? What is your view about it? Because the cost of failure is very high
Yes.
if you go wrong in healthcare.
So I had to use a few books to elevate my laptop. And one of the books which I have used is called Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick. What he talks about in that book is think of AI like a partner who you work with. Don't leave everything to AI. Work with AI. So similarly, of course, this question is very important because you cannot misinterpret things and misinterpret what the patient has said, misinterpret the medicine name, misinterpret the disease which the patient might be having. Couple of approaches which can be used to mitigate this risk, and these approaches are basically taken, from this self-driving industries and other industries like that. And the first approach in that has to do with this concept of human in the loop always. Right? So what that means is this: AI will create the draft for the doctors will then review, doctor will approve it. We are augmenting and not replacing doctors. That is what we are saying. Think of it like a maker checker in the financial ecosystem. Second, which we are doing, is confidence scoring. So let's say an AI detected 95% with 95% accuracy that it is hypertension. So we can auto populate hypertension. If it is 70% accuracy, we can just, have this quotations or some form of highlight which the doctor might have to, recheck it again to review it or to confirm whether it was hypertension or not. Third, I think has to do with constantly improving the models itself. So it has to do with medical specific trainings. So whenever right now we have not really entered into medical use cases as such, our primary focus is on the sales analytics, but we are in constant talks with hospitals. So whenever we do use these models, we will ensure that we don't use generic models, but we use the models which are trained on medical lexicon as such and are of HIPAA compliant and GDPR compliant. And I think that healthcare institutions implementing conversational AI will have to follow one simple rule, and that is nothing goes to the patient without the approval of the doctor. But even with this safeguard, doctors can report significant time saving and better patient interactions. So if their mindset is there, they will of course treat patients better and will be able to review the notes which have already been taken care by AI.
Understood. I think very well said, Aryan. Human in the loop is important, specifically for areas which are highly sensitive and more importantly, where cost of failure or the ramifications are much, much bigger. Now, also, let's talk about technology space. I've spent 15 years in B2C product management, and you also have good diverse experience in product and business. And we have seen so many cases where technology teams and product teams discuss so many things, and what actually comes up as an end product is very different from how it is typically envisaged when it is kind of first drawn on whiteboard. Help me understand, Aryan, in your view, how this software development process will change, in which business teams, product teams typically have some ideas and a lot of things get lost in translation. How those things will significantly improve with conversational AI.
This is something which we do internally because our core business is conversational AI. So I'll just give you a quick example of how the software development process looks in our company. I'll also talk a little bit about, what to avoid while using AI to build software. So say we have, our product meet and core meet on a day-to-day basis. We have all of our customer conversations analyzed from Neo. This they tie into our internal company dashboards, and from there, let's say, customers are highlighting that they're facing this specific problem. We can analyze all these customer conversations to find out, okay, this is the problem, this is the current list of features which we have, these are the proposed list of features, and then accordingly PRD is also automated. So this entire process of understanding, of first and foremost listening to customer conversations, to storing those customer conversations, analyzing the customer's pain point, finally creating a PRD which is relevant and contextual for the product which we are building. This end-to-end product development cycle we have automated, at least on our end. And from here, once a PRD is created, again, trust but verify is the word to be remembered. Human in the loop has to be there, and that human in the loop is our product team. They verify whether this PRD is correct or not, make final touches to the PRD, and finally, we as a tech team just take that up and start software. Now, once the PRD has been made, the software development process looks like this. At least the AI assisted software development process, right? We do use AI heavily on a day-to-day basis for software development because I believe that it can 10x developer productivity if used correctly. It can point to an X also if used incorrect. So we spent, we have this culture of a lot of trial and error when it comes to leveraging new technologies in our workflows. So we use these tools like Cursor, there is Claude Code, and so on. Again, the main concept over here is when it comes to software development, you need to, think of AI as a mental model, as a junior developer. Don't think of AI like a senior developer. What I mean by that is you have to exactly define that this is what is needed to be done, and you give that plan to the AI like a PRD, very nitty-gritty granular plan, and then you review each step of the process which AI is taking. Okay, this is the project structure which AI has decided. Does it need to be changed? You tell the AI. So this iterative loop has to be followed of creation of the plan, refinement of the plan via having human in the loop, and finally creation. So this is what it looks like as of now. Again, the primary concept to be remembered over here is trust the AI but validate what it is saying.
And then, do you mean then it will require far lesser iterations, because most of the iterations happen because of misinterpretation of what someone said and what someone meant and what gets built. But once I think everything is so structured and so much synthesized with the help of technology, it's easier to get to the product what was originally envisaged. Do you think that timeline to get shortened?
Timelines will get shortened, but I wouldn't say that the number of iterations will shrink. I will definitely say that the velocity at which these iterations are happening will shrink, right? Because you can build feature faster, you can test it fast. So you will still require a lot of iterations because product development by default requires a lot of iterations, but the iteration life cycle will shrink.
Okay. So, since we're discussing about technology, when, for example, I and you are doing a conversation, one audio gets converted into a transcript, which every layman will understand in terms of how it works. The complications in that are who is speaking what, identification of a speaker, and second is what is the mood of conversation, because typically comes across from the body language, which obviously does not come when you are doing a voice transcript. So, especially for all business leaders and tech folks who are listening to this conversation, what do you think are the limitations of conversational AI, and in future what can be fixed, specifically with respect to emotions not being there, exact identification of speaker not being there, and this will be integral if this needs to be adopted at an enterprise scale.
100%. I'm aligned on the fact that to have proper conversational analysis, an AI needs to be as good as a human in terms of detecting emotions. And why that is important is, of course, you can do text level analysis. Once you have transcribed, you can ask another AI to kind of analyze that transcript, create minutes of meetings. And there are some AI models which are so great that from the transcript itself, it is able to understand what are the emotional tonality of the conversation. For example, from this, our Neo can understand, okay, this was an inquisitive conversation, or this was a podcast, was curious. But text has its own limitations because a lot of emotions are conveyed just by the way in which you speak. Now, current limitations over there are the cultural nuances. And for example, just giving you one small example, there was this one company, I wouldn't take the name, but this one company out of the states, they were making models which can analyze or understand emotions from the conversations. For example, if you laugh, it can detect laughter. When you shout, it can detect that it was anger, right? We tested out that model. Now, one of our teammates was laughing, but his laughter was categorized as distress signal, which is polar opposite emotion to laughter. So, emotional understanding of tonality of prosody. It is not there yet at all. Anyone claiming that it is there are have probably gamed their benchmarks or are just delusional or lying. It is probably around 60% accuracy. But I am personally very excited for these models to be coming up which can understand emotions or which can understand laughter, which can understand sarcasm. I think within the next year or two, the models should become much more accurate.
I think that will be a big game changer. And that would mean that we have unlimited humans who are listening, who are as efficient as robots in terms of transcribing, understanding, and even synthesizing the information, which is very important for the business. Now, when we are talking about big businesses, let's also talk about small businesses, MSMEs, or people who have small setups, 10 to 15 member teams, and essentially they don't have big tech budgets. First, tell me, is this technology, conversational AI, very expensive or prohibitive for MSMEs and small businesses, or do you think it's affordable? If it is affordable, what kind of use cases do you believe are very relevant for them? And in case with your product, if you have been able to crack some problem, our audience would love to understand.
By the very nature of technology, I wouldn't really say that it is expensive or cheaper. It depends on what you are doing with that. For example, if I were to build a startup which can, take all the dialogues from all the Indian movies, transcribe that. Of course, you since you are analyzing so much data, it will by default become expensive. But it does not have to be that expensive for your use cases. Let's say for MSME use cases. So think of it like, imagine there is a jewelry shop where a sales team is capturing, every customer's preferences. Like for example, this customer likes antique finish, or let's say that this customer's anniversary is in March, or their budget is, let's say, 1 or 2 lakhs or something. So previously, this knowledge kind of lived in salespeople's heads. It was not out there. This knowledge was not captured nowhere. Now with conversational AI, it kind of becomes, think of it like institutional memory. Now this jewelry shop as such have a memory of its own and not just salespeople individually. Or consider another scenario that there is a pharma sales rep who needs to kind of remember which doctor prefers which brand. What their concerns are, what time are they most receptive. For example, someone is receptive towards the evening, someone is receptive towards the morning. So with conversational AI, they are kind of building the complete customer profiles automatically without any human intervention in the loop. And now coming to your second question, let's say, can a small business adopt this without adding complexity? Because small businesses do not have their own tech teams, and it's a fair concern. But I think the beauty is it's actually very simple than the current systems like CRMs and so on. Think about it like what SMEs do now. They have WhatsApp groups, they have Excel sheets, they have paper notes. We are not asking them to do any of that, or we are not asking them to learn Salesforce also. We are just saying, just talk. Our AI will organize everything for you. You don't have to do anything at all. And I think depending on how much conversations and so on they are having, I think if they allocate a budget of, let's say, 5 to 10K also per month, they can get a system on their existing phones. There is no need of training anyone, just speak naturally, insights will come automatically. And I think the ROI they can start seeing in a few weeks and not just months. That's where we think value can be provided to us.
Well put, Aryan. So that means very affordable. I mean, as good as any smartphone app to get started. And once you start understanding value, you can invest more in complex solutions to see, I mean, if that investment works out. But essentially, it's all about understanding value and then keep investing and keep getting more and more value out of this in whatever business you are in, whether you are a chartered accountant or a distributor or in any other kind of a business where you do a lot of conversations.
Right.
Now, while we talked a lot about AI, Aryan, let's also talk a lot about human behavior. Because while technologies keep coming, keep changing, as humans, we typically resist a lot of changes. And it is a taboo for a lot of people to wear what you have wearing in this conversation. And people may not like it, they may forget, and some lot of times they even resist using technology. How do you think that will change? And who are typically the early adopters of this kind of a technology where you are actually banking on a second brain, which is a virtual brain, not your own brain, for storing important information and then relying on it? Because over last few years or decades, or specifically business professionals who have 15, 20 years of experience, they need to unlearn a lot of things, including changing their own behavior, how they attend meetings, how do they talk, ensuring that this is there, and even going back to this and using it more effectively. It's not just about storing the recording, storing all this transcription. It's more about how do you get best out of this, and it's a big change in human behavior. Do you face challenges with your business, Aryan, in which while people are using devices, they are storing a lot of things, they still miss a lot of times, they still forget a lot of times, even if they have data stored, they do not know how to query it, how to talk to the data to get best out of it. And in your own in your with your own product, have you seen good remarkable case studies where some kind of people have actually used it in an excellent way and they have performed really well?
So it is what we feel about usage when it comes to how people are using the product. Think of it like, what do we promise? We promise that none of your conversations will be lost. It will always be remembered. But does that mean a user would want to remember every conversation? That is not the case. Or would want to know about every conversation? That is not the case. Think of it like we are creating like an insurance for the user. Primary with the value proposition that you will never forget anything at all. Now, with respect to case studies, we have recently, I think about 2 weeks back, piloted our device with a fintech company based out of Bangalore. They're gradually expanding from there. I think it's a little too early to understand, how sales in performance is being impacted by that pilot. I think we'll have better data on it about in about 2 to 3 weeks or something like that. Thinking about, impacting individuals as such. So we have had case studies wherein, a lot of our users post on LinkedIn, post on Twitter that this was supposed to be an important conversation. They said some figure, and if I didn't have this device, I would have forgotten that figure and I would have quoted something else. So there are small nitty-gritty details like this. That doesn't mean that on a day-to-day basis they want to remember a conversation. But what that means is that when there is a need to be remembering, and we are there to be remembering things for you and to be telling you that this is what the fact which was discussed. Now, with respect to how do you get this data, we have made it very simple. There is a chat-based interface on our app, like a chat GPT, like a WhatsApp, to talk to it like you talk to your friend, to talk to it like you talk to your personal assistant. Ask it, for example, you can say, okay, there was this client named Raj who I had, talked about selling this specific car. If you are a car dealer salesman, what was his concerns and so on. Now in the chat only you can get a response like a personal assistant. So that interface is what we have simplified and worked on as on the product level. That is about how do you use this technology without being overwhelmed. With respect to your first question about, businesses undertaking this technology and actually being able to use this technology, I think the main buyers on the enterprise side, if you are a business leader who want to start tomorrow on conversational intelligence, this is what I would suggest you to do. I think first thing I think you need to do is pick your highest value conversation type. Now, not all meetings are made equal. One type, maybe it is sales call, maybe it is customer support call, maybe it is, team stand-ups, right? You need to, as a business leader, analyze where do you use most important information. Maybe for you it is team huddles, maybe for you it is customer support or sales calls, something. Pick one. Be very, very sharp and laser focused. Second thing is start off with a very, very small pilot. Don't implement conversational intelligence throughout your company at scale. Maybe 5 to 10 people, not the whole organization. And pick your early adopters if you want to implement it to a sales team. Maybe the early adopters can be, salesmen whose performance have not been so good, or maybe salesmen who have been forgetting details about, clients and so on. Another thing which can be done is, with respect to any product, you need to define, clear metrics. How is this, an ROI for me as a business? So define very clear metrics. Maybe it is to reduce, CRM time by 50%. Now salespeople are spending 50% less time in inputting data. Maybe it is about capturing 100% of the customer's feature request. Just pick number one ROI, whatever your metric is. Finally, I think it has to come down to allocate certain budget. Maybe it is 50,000, maybe it is 1 lakh, according to your own business, and dedicate that specifically towards that pilot. Track the metrics properly, and when the ROI comes and when you can see clear metrics that, okay, now we can remember more details about the customer. Now we know what customers are complaining. Now the sales team is spending much less time on the CRM and much more time in actually pitching the product. Then you know that this is working. When this is working, invest more money, then scale.
Nice. So what you're saying is just build a habit, start taking baby steps, and once you maintain a basic regime with one particular thing and see value, you will keep adding more and more things to ensure that you get best ROI on. Very nicely put, Aryan. In terms of regulation, do you believe right now, in the absence of regulation, I see a lot of people, including me, for example, in certain meetings, we open some recording software just to without taking a consent. Do you think and do you foresee specifically this can get regulated? And effectively, if there are regulations, it can put a lot of friction in terms of the usage of conversational AI. Because typically, in a free world, people do not expect what they express will be recorded without their consent. And if this becomes really a widespread phenomena in which everyone is recording everyone and every word which gets uttered, do you think it will create a lot of problem in future? And in the absence of regulation right now, what we are discussing seems magical, but as soon as the regulations come in, I mean, there will be a different path altogether.
I would say there are two separate challenges, two separate but critical challenges. The first one has to do with the regulatory side of things itself. And I personally feel that, on the regulation front, India is actually ahead. We have the Data Protection Act in India. Consent frameworks are very clear. The key, I think, has to do with transparency. For example, there is an on the price, they want their salesmen to be wearing our device, or if not our device, some form of conversational intelligence they want to have. Now, you have to tell the employees and the customers exactly what is being captured and why is it being captured. Given that, just a plugin over here, our device and our software does not record things. What I mean by that is you cannot replay back any audio data. Once it is analyzed, the audio is deleted. So what we have are only transcriptions, which cannot be presented in a court of law because they are not 100% accurate. They can be edited. MOMs can be edited as well. There is that. Second thing has to do with single party consent. What that means is if I am wearing my device or any other note taking app, only the user of the product needs to be aware that it can listen to you and transcribe and take notes. Because let's say you are in a cafe. You told the person in front of you that I'm switching off this on this note taker. Someone who is sitting on the right side, you did not take their consent. You still have their voices. For example, another example is you might have pictures of a lot of people, dozens of people in your phone who have no idea that they are in your phone, just some strangers who just happen to be in that background. So there is a concept of single party consent. More emphasis is on employee resistance is more nuanced, is what I would say. Some would say that, from George Orwell's 1984, Big Brother is listening. But we are seeing the opposite. I think the change will be on the opposite side. Salespeople, ultimately, what do they care about? They care about their sales. How well they are able to sell, how much, because their incentives are directly tied with that. So, in fact, they love not doing CRMs. Doctor love not taking notes. They love treating patients, not, spending their time in front of computers. So I think the real insight has to do with, the resistant is not to AI, the resistance is to the surveillance part of things itself. So the successful companies need to position it as your personal assistant and not management monitoring tool or something like that. And give employees the control, let them delete their recordings, edit transcripts, choose what they want to share, and adoption will follow the trust.
Completely agree, Aryan, on that. I think it's more about being very transparent in terms of where we are using these devices, and because this is going to be important in terms of how this evolves. So before we wrap, let's step away from business for a second and focus on a bit of personal angle. I'll share a story. I was going through YouTube and realized that there is an option in WhatsApp wherein you can share your chat, even with say Chat GPT, and get some understanding about whom you are chatting with. I know my wife for last 15 years, so and I preserved all the WhatsApp chats, and I wanted to understand how the relationship has evolved in last 15 years. So I just did one thing, shared the entire chat of last 15 years, which was there in the iCloud, shared with Chat GPT with a very nice prompt. I was amazed to see the ability of Chat GPT, and that could have been with any other LLM, share nuggets of information, to share how conversation has evolved, how we have started talking about lot of rudimentary stuff now as compared to a lot of things about going, planning, and a lot of other things. Even in professional lives, while in Slack and other things where multiple people are involved and you have to do a deeper team analysis in terms of communication, how the teams are involved, where is the stress. So we see a lot happening if you are able to understand your Slack groups better, sentiments better, and if there is some intelligent engine in the background who is able to gauge the emotions of people talking. It's not just verbal, it's also in Slack, which is very much possible now with current LLMs. Do you want to share any of your personal experience where you believe whether it is conversational AI or interpretation of conversation is leading to something which is really disruptive or magnificent?
I have been recently reading this book. It's called The Courage to Be Disliked. So it's by two Japanese authors. They focus on this psychology of Adlerian psychology. So basically, what Alfred Adler says is that all the problems in your life are interpersonal relationship problems, but all the happiness in your life also comes from interpersonal relationships. Everything you have to do is with people. Without people, what will you do? And every happiness is with people. Understanding your relationship with other people, where it is training, which relationships need more effort, which relationship can be watered, taking the analogy of a garden. I think those are massive and huge use cases and very relevant for the today's day and age, because as you would be aware, the Surgeon General of US declared loneliness as an epidemic in US. Gradually this has come to Indian subcontinent as well, wherein people have lesser friends. They are talking to their friends much less often. They are talking to their families much less often. We are not able to understand cues from our colleagues and co-workers, whether some relationship is being strained and so on and so forth. In fact, what you talked about just now about, analyzing conversation with your wife, what I did was I took entirety of the conversations from Neo. I made my own POC using Claude Code. I'm like, okay, now give me my relationship graph. Which relationships should I work on? To people who are closest to me. And surprisingly, see, I was not taken aback by the fact that it was able to detect which people are close to me. I know that, but what is to be done? For example, it caught one instance that I have a tendency to interrupt people when it is technical discussions and it is a production issue. The interruption increased 70% of the times. And so actionable feedback was listen more during production issues. Now, how amazing of an advice that is, and who was going to give me that advice? I've recently started implementing that, and I think we are also moving more and more towards relationship intelligence, and I think that is the next frontier. But that has to be implemented very mindfully, so that you don't intervene and you let people also become more self-aware while giving them small nudges. So I think
That's incredible, Aryan. I mean, while we are talking a lot about business, SMEs, some sales, marketing, but I think all of us spend huge amount of time in managing relationships and more importantly, nurturing and growing relationships. And if there is an assistant, for example, insights which you said, and I think it is of immense value because it is like someone is living with you, trying to understand you and trying to make you better to ensure that your relationships with people around you are getting stronger. So I think it is incredible discussion, Aryan. Thanks a lot for your time. So before we sign off, so one big takeaway for our audience today is do not ignore conversations. They are the biggest growth hack. And like we just discussed, it is not just for businesses but also for relationships at a personal level also. So conversational AI is going to go mainstream very, very soon. I hope all of us try it out, understand it, and evolve with this. Thanks, Aryan, for being there. Incredible session. We learned a lot from you and wishing you all the very best for the product which you have built. Thank you very much for being there.